in general, these numbers on the debt service aren't going to be a lot different. So, again, if you decide on scheme 3 on page 6, you don't have to issue all 10. You could do 7 million this year, which plus the 3 you got would give you 10, and then we could come back and issue the balance next year, and we'd still be under 10 for both. On the page 7 for scheme 4, again, there's a 10 and a 10,295,000. Next year we can decide, can we get that second issue down to 10 or whatever. Maybe we go ahead and issue a non-bank qualified deal, but if we can somehow, we'll have a better handle on the project cost. Maybe it's more than 10.295. Maybe we have to go a little higher. Now those are decisions we can, or maybe we do 7 and then 3 the following year, depending on the cash needs of the project. So you have flexibility there. On scheme 5, on page 8, we've got 10, 10, and 2.5. Again, we could spread those first two smaller, so the total, neither one is over 10, but the market is very favorable, so you may want to do, if you're going to move ahead with one of these projects, you may want to do one this year. You may find you don't have to if you have enough money to carry you for a while, and maybe we start doing the real financing in 15, 16, and 17. So these are the kind of decisions that that we can make once you decide on which option you're going to undertake. And again, page 9, scheme 6 is same kind of decisions. The scheme 7 is the only one of these which involves one issuance of bonds. So again, that's 6,950,000 or 7 million, as the case may be. You may want to shift that to 2015 if you have enough cash to tide you over. On the other hand, if rates stay low and you don't want to gamble on the market, and the rates are extremely low due to many factors, including worldwide uncertainty, fear of economic slowdown throughout the world, and there's a real scarcity of municipal bonds on the market, which is leading to more demand and less supply, and a whole lot of things are keeping rates low. So it is a good time to be in the market. I did a lot of talking, and we have a lot of numbers here, so I'd be happy to.
Well, I think the other problem is, we'll have other needs too. We'll have streets and infrastructure that also have to be dealt with. So, that's something else that has to be figured into the numbers. To say that we won't necessarily need all 10 each year, if we want to do the full project, or if we want to renovate the current library, we still have to pave streets.
Right.
And fix sewer pipes. So,
Gordon, in your analysis, there's obviously the $30 million project versus several of the others. In the past, we've talked about the ratios that we have to meet as far as our debt ratio in order to borrow. Do any of these throw us out of that?
You have a statutory, I was going over this with Amy. Let me just get the book.
Okay.
There's a statutory debt limitation.
Right.
And it's a formula based on your revenues, your average revenues for the last 3 years, times 2.5 times less what you have. And I'll tell you what that number exactly as of what it was last year. These capacities tend to grow a little bit because, one, you're paying down debt, and two, your revenues tend to go up a little bit each year. So you had a borrowing capacity of $81 million, less the approximate $36 million that you had outstanding, leaving you a remaining capacity of $45 million.
Thank you.
Okay?
And you'll be available at the work session, the July work session for any
One of us
questions?
will, depend, what is the date?
July.
7th.
I will not be available, but Jamie will be here, and he's fully knowledgeable of all this, all the numbers.
If any commissioner has any questions about any of
Any
this.
question in the meantime?
'Cause we're just taking in the information tonight, so
Okay.
but I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions come the work session.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thank
So Amy will be going through a number of slides now to talk about the real estate tax implications with the different borrowing scenarios that Mr. Walker had just previewed with you. I think it's important to note that we have, in the handout that I'm going to be giving the board today, there was some updated numbers. I'm not sure that that we all used updated numbers. I believe we have in each of the scenarios.
Take care, thank you.
But I also want to add that there was an additional alternative added, and that was if you did nothing else except construct a new police building and deferred any other work. And so there is a seventh scheme in the finance picture here. So I'm just going to ask Amy to speak to the financial.
Gordon was kind enough to give you an overview of the big financial picture. This will kind of give you an overview of how it will affect each of our households. There's a couple different factors that will impact this, and these are the same factors that have impacted this discussion for the past few months when, different estimates have been calculated and things, and these are the things that have changed over the couple months to bring us to where we are today. The taxable assessment base and how we calculate our tax revenues. Right now, we have 17,801 taxable parcels here in Haverford Township that represent about $3 billion of real estate value. We get appeals each and every month. We get individuals appealing their assessments. We get big landowners appealing their assessments. We just lost an appeal that brought our taxable base down $35 million. So these things are part of our monthly routine that we get and we have to deal with.
I'm sorry. Who was that? You knew I was going to ask the question. Who was the one what was that?
Was the quadrangle property. The assessment base is also increased each month by new construction, by people making improvements to their homes.
Yeah.
And those kind of things are favorable to us. The other areas for impact is consistent collection rates. Haverford Township residents, we all need to congratulate ourselves. We only lien less than 2% of our real estate tax collection. And that is very good for a community of our size. So it's even 1.8%. So as long as that stays consistent, that works well for us too. The bond market conditions, as Gordon said, when we first started talking about this 6 months ago, interest rates have gone down 80 basis points in some situations. So that is a big swing. We also, for purposes here, I calculated too, an average assessed property, that's taking the $3 billion of assessed value, dividing it by 17,801 parcels, comes up to 171. That's not market value, that's assessed value as determined by the Board of Assessment. So that's not what you could sell your house for, it's not what you bought your house for, it's assessed value. Commissioner Holmes likes to look at median assessed value, so I brought that too. Median means half of us are above that number, and truly half of us are below that number. So hopefully with those two numbers, it might give you a little perspective of where you might fall in these changes if these amounts are borrowed. This was what was referred to earlier as Scheme 1, which with project costs of a little over $23 million. The new debt that would be needed is about $20.5 million, and it's the 23 less the 3 that we have on hand from the 2013 issue that was earmarked for design and impact studies, plus the cost of issuance. The annual debt service on borrowing $20.5 million approximately would be an annual debt service payment, and all debt service payment means is an annual payment, an annual mortgage payment per se, to put it in everybody's terms, is $1.1 million. What we would need, if that was totally funded by real estate taxes, would be approximately a 5.1% increase. The impact on an average assessed home, $64 a year. On a median assessed home, $54 a year. Now, what Gordon was talking about in an issue this size and in some of the more expensive schemes is that we could do it in phases. And what the phases would do, which would be also to allow that 5.1% to be spread out. So maybe in year 1, it would be 2.5. In year 2, it could be 2.6. So it wouldn't all necessarily have to be all in 1 year. And that's what the point he was trying to get across with that multiple issue. We'd also be able to gradually roll out the ultimate tax impact, which in this case would be 5.1%. This was scheme 2. This was the new administration building with a new police station, new library, including the 2-level parking structure. The total project cost $29.3. The debt needed, again, I won't define it every time, but the debt needed is the project cost less the $3 million we have on hand, plus the cost of issuance. And these are all over 30 years. Just like we would finance a home purchase over 30 years, we would finance a project of these size over 30 years. The annual debt service on this option would be $1.425 million, repaid each year for 30 years. That includes interest and principal. Real estate tax impact would be 6.6. On the average assessed home of about 171, it would be $83 a year. And on the median assessed home of 143, $69 a year. This was scheme 3, the new police station renovated administration building and renovated library. Project costs, as discussed earlier, were 18.3. The new debt would be 15.6. Annual debt service of $830,000. Real estate tax impact of about 3.8. Impact on the average assessed home of the 171 would be $48. Median assessed of 143 would be $40. Scheme 4, this was the new police station, renovated administration building, renovated library. Project cost 22.9, new debt 20.2. The annual debt service or annual repayment of principal and interest would be a little over $1 million a year. Again, if this was funded totally and solely by real estate taxes, it would equate to an approximate 5% real estate tax increase. That would be $63 on the average assessed property and $53 on a median assessed property. Scheme 5, new police station, separate new library, and renovated existing administration building. Project cost a little over $25 million, new debt a little over 22.5. Annual repayment of principal and interest would be $1.2 million each year for 30 years. Real estate tax impact 5.6, which would equate to $70 and $58 respectively on an average or median assessed property. Scheme 6, which I believe this was the highest at $30 million, a little over $30 million. The new debt needed would be 27.8, and the annual repayment of principal and interest for 30 years would be almost 1.5 million, would equate to a real estate tax impact of 6.9%, which would be $86 and $72 respectively on an average and median assessed property. Scheme 7, this was in the options I was given, as Lori suggested. It's just the new police station only. We use 9.8 as the project cost, which may be a little high, or it might be a little high. The new debt needed under this scenario would be almost $7 million. Annual repayment of principal and interest would be $370,000. Real estate tax impact would be 1.7%, which would equate to a $22 and $18 respective impact on those properties. When these options are being evaluated, things to keep in mind is that this impact is solely for any new debt that's incurred and to repay that new debt. Therefore, any additional revenues needed for operations, the township needs to run, the township manager needs to balance a budget. So any additional monies that he would need for that is on top of this, and that really does need to be understood. There's union obligations, there's ever increasing health care and pension costs, so that just needs to be taken into consideration. Also, Any potential tax increase that we talked about here, though, is not offset. There's been a lot of great ideas about grants or selling pieces of real estate we already have, and that would obviously reduce the amount of money that we'd need to borrow and reduce the amount of tax increase. Okay, so that is what I prepared to give an idea of what the different impacts would be.
I had Kelly here because we were hoping to put a little bit of a video up, but, and I'm not capable of operating
I
that.
can bring it up. I just couldn't, it wasn't working in the presentation, that's all.
And this is a slide that This was a slide that was prepared by Pannoni Associates. Dave, if you want to just give a little
Sure, that's-
description.
In fact, Kelly, you might want to run it a couple times. That's a three-dimensional model. Oh, That's, here, Cal, just, it'll loop. It's a three-dimensional model. I mentioned we graded out the site, and when we grade out the site, it actually creates its own it creates a three-dimensional model. Doesn't have all the architectural bells and whistles, but it shows you this existing stadium, the new building without the library and without a parking garage. So that was that first scheme that we talked about. You can see the brown along the green, they're the retaining walls. If you remember, we talked about retaining walls in certain locations. I thought it was a nice model. It creates itself off of the program. I thought it sort of presented well with some scale. And the next one we have shows another story on the building and a parking garage. So it shows with the library on the property. Stadium the same, building's actually a story higher, and then you can see the structured parking on the bottom left there.
What is that little building in the corner we keep saying? Is that?
Yes, sir.
That's the retaining wall? The
No, it's a garage.
For the police station.
police garage that's currently there?
Yep, and you'll see, see the little brown there right across the front? That's the retaining wall.
Right, yeah, I get that, but that other little building in the corner.
It's not That actually even takes in accommodations, reconstructing Columbia, as we mentioned down below. It's a decent model, I thought, for showing a little 3D.
Is that Columbia that you keep referring to, is that like that old rail line, the railroad?
Columbia is a private drive, it's an unimproved township street going back to the field.
Yeah, okay. We're not taking any comments from the audience or any questions.
Thanks, guys. Which one is this? This scenario here, you can tell because there's three big structures on one with the parking garage. This would be the township building and police station on the same property. And then the second slide, which shows a third large building, that would be if you add the library in. So the building on the bottom left, the new one's a story higher, and then it shows the structured parking.
That's going to be the end of the presentation. There's a handout that's being passed down to each of the board members. It's actually just in summary, some of the more pertinent slides. Each of the site configurations include the slide that has the costs associated with each of the scheme, and there is also a breakdown that's attached to the back that you've not seen in the presentation. It is a spreadsheet that was prepared by Mike Ryan from IMC Construction. Mr. Ryan is here this evening, and will be attending the meeting on July the 7th to answer any specific questions. And thank you, Kelly, for coming and helping out with the PowerPoint.
Mr. Mealy, if I could.
Go ahead.
Really. As the board begins to consider all the information that you got this evening, and as well as some of the questions that you'll get from some of your constituents, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of them, because we'll put this information, as Mr. Alita said, we're going to do our best to get this on by noon tomorrow, because this document's such a big document. I'm going to ask that you get all of these questions that you have from your constituents, that you forward anything you get from your constituents, or you get anytime over the next few days or few weeks, that you get any of the questions, you forward them to Lori no later than June the 30th, so we can get these questions to our professionals who did a presentation tonight, and then we develop a good question and answer information. Then we'll have this posted on the website as well, very much like what we did for the U.S. Open.
Larry, is Amy's in here too? This packet here?
Amy is, no,
Will we have that?
we can get that on there.
Okay.
That'll be on, the entire presentation will be on the website.
Yeah, the
And what you got is a summary.
Yes, absolutely. Then when we get the entire presentation, when I work with our IT director, Mr.
Tomorrow.
Clary,
You'll have it tomorrow.
I got to figure out how to. Apparently, it's so large. Even if I have to get it on a disc, we'll get it. We'll figure it out.
If we get Amy's
We
with
may have to
this,
zip it or.
I'll show you what it is.
Okay.
If Amy can forward it, that'd be great, hers.
But it'll be on the website. Everything that you saw tonight will be on the website.
Wasn't tonight that the audio was on, everybody got to look at the audio, and the next week at the commissioners' meeting,
That's when,
the people come and ask their questions next week?
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then they have until the 30th to what? Come back?
Send us questions if they like to through email, or those people who can't come to the meeting can send us, and we will make sure that those questions get answered at the work session in July.
All right, when will the actual vote be taken then? On the 14th of July supposedly? Is that what we're saying?
That's what, yeah, I mean, that's
Okay.
what you never know what's going to happen between now and then, but we are hoping to get it done by July 14th.
So next week is just a discussion, what's on the agenda for next week?
Our discussion as well as public comment.
What's that, the
And then
second?
further discussion at the following work session.
At the following work session, and answering of any public questions who couldn't be at the meeting, anybody who sends in questions, we will answer those also. Then there will also be, before the vote,